Do you leave your audio-video equipment on all the time? And more importantly, should you? Is it a good idea? This is a question I get all the time, not just about, our own Axiom electronics products, but, other companies. Should I leave my AVR on all the time, et cetera, et cetera? Now, some of these questions I think stem from audiophiles and some equipment owners believing that leaving the equipment on all the time makes a difference to the sound quality. Now, I personally have never found that. I think that once a piece of electronics has reached its normal operating temperature, so all the circuitry and everything has stabilized and the unit is going to not heat up anymore at idle if it's a power amplifier, etc., there's really nothing going on past that, in my opinion and in my experience. The question of should you leave your equipment on all the time, is it a good idea? I mean, there's a lot of things. I won't get into the political aspect, although, climate change and the amount of stress on the electrical grids across the world as, electric vehicles become more popular, etc. Then there's the don't forget about it matter of it costs you money. You are literally, if you're leaving your component on, even if you're not actually listening to something or watching something, it's not doing anything, it's sitting there consuming power for no reason, and you might as well be throwing your money away. In many parts of the world, electricity is extremely cheap, and you may say, well, I don't care, it only costs me $1 a month or something to leave my audio system on. But there are parts of the world, including where I live, where I'm in what's considered a low density area, and I pay probably double, if not more, than for electricity than I would in a big city. So, for myself, it definitely makes an impact. The more important reason of why I don't personally leave my equipment on all the time is because of longevity. And this is also a debated topic. A number of people think that the stress and the shock of heating and cooling a component, or the act of using the power switch to turn the unit on and off, and that initial power up inrush current or power that's drawn when you turn it on is worse for the unit than leaving it on 24/7. I don't believe that to be the case, and there are some very good reasons why heat is the enemy when it comes to electronics. So leaving it on all the time and heat it up all the time is going to reduce the life of some of the componentry that are in your electronics. This is a fact of life. This is not debatable. You may have heard over the years people who dabble in vintage equipment talking about having to recap a unit or change out the electrolytic capacitors, these sorts of things. These wear out. They wear out over time. The electrolyte that's inside them, which is an oil or a liquid, will dry out. But more importantly, the manufacturers of capacitors have a life table, and it depends on the quality of the capacitor, etc. And then what they'll do is, say for a capacitor like this, it's specified to be usable for 2,000 hours at 105 degrees Celsius. Now, in most cases, if your equipment is operating correctly, it's never going to be running that hot. But the manufacturer publishes what's called a derating table. So as the temperature goes down, the lifespan of the capacitor goes up. But if I compare, let's say normal ambient with the unit off 20 degrees Celsius, let's say, if I look at the rating for lifespan compared to, let's say, 40 degrees Celsius, which is, perfectly possible as a idle temperature on something like a Class AB power amplifier, for instance, we're talking about potentially 10,000 hours of additional lifespan between it running at 20 degrees C or just sitting there at 20 degrees C and actually operating in an environment of 40 degrees Celsius. What you're doing by leaving the component on all the time is you're just aging and reducing the lifespan of parts like capacitors. There are other components as well. Transistors don't tend to wear out. They tend to fail because of lead corrosion over time. Diodes, depending on how they're used, they can become noisy over time. And then remember that, there are relays that, electronically controlled switches to switch inputs and switch signals around an electrical component. Those relays will actually age faster. Contacts will get dirtier, etc., or wear out faster at higher temperatures, particularly in something like a power amplifier. And just the fact of turning the unit on and off means a relay is probably switching something or some things during the power on-off stage, and just leaving it idle all the time, maybe some of the relays are not getting use. So the contacts, if they're not moving around and self-cleaning during that turn on, turn off process, they can actually get noisy, or they can wear out faster. So I personally don't leave my equipment on. I would love to hear from you. What do you believe? Are you someone who believes that you can hear a huge difference between having a component left on 24/7 versus turning it on, let's say 15 minutes before critical listening? And what are your thoughts in general? Have you found that you've had better luck leaving your equipment on, or do you do what I do and only turn it on when you're going to use it? Thank you as always for watching these videos.